Under Maharam's blanket. If you were clever or deceptive, Maharaji ignored you. But if you were simple and open, he would help you. Maharaji, when he liked a person, expressed it from the heart. When he didn't want to see the face of a person, he would cover his face with a blanket. Maharaji did not reveal himself to everybody. He could see into the soul of a person. Where we would see a nice sort of chap, he would see the person's inner workings. To some people, he would just give prasad and send them away. Whether a person had been with Maharaji for 25 years or was a rank newcomer, all were given the same consideration. There were no favorites, and no one was indispensable. On one occasion, a caravan of army trucks stopped at the gate and hundreds of soldiers came and stood in line. Maharaji was talking to a farmer sitting beside him. One by one, the soldiers and officers came forward, bent over and touched Maharaji's feet, looked at him for another moment, and then turned away. That experience was almost of them seemed to want, but every so often one would come forward who seemed different, perhaps seeming to have a bit more light or perhaps seeming to suffer more. Many times I watched as such a person bent forward. Maharaji would hit him on the head or give him a flower or interrupt his conversation to say something to him, such as, "Your mother will be all right," or "You shouldn't fight with your superiors," or "You love God very much." We could see only the tiniest fraction of what Maharaji saw. The soldiers wanted pictures of Hanuman, the protecting deity of the Indian army, and of Maharaji to carry as protection in war. Maharaji said, "The army has good and simple and spiritual men." It was as if Maharaj were deciding to do this or that. Rather, the nature of the seeker was eliciting from him, as from a mirror, this or that response. The first time I saw Maharaji was at a Meta, and I was asked to come to Chitrakoot. The first thing that impressed me was that he was like a mirror. In Chitrakoot, there were so many people, and they were talking about all his doings, and I was never interested, but said that I thought he was like a mirror. When they then told Maharaji, he was very happy to hear that I thought this. I would talk with Maharaji about all matters, including such things as science or humans going to the moon. He was like a mirror. He had nothing to do with any of it, but he showed interest, and the next time you spoke of it, he would follow what you were saying. He used to say, "I remember everything." Maharaji did not seem to be deciding how to react to any devotee, and in fact advised others to see God in everyone. It is deception to teach by individual differences and karma. Nevertheless, when pressed, he could explain his behavior. Once, as I was chastising Maharaji for giving photos to people who were worldly and didn't care about him, he said, "You don't understand me. If I tell a man he is a great bhakt devotee, I am planting a seed. If a person already has the seed planted and growing, why should I plant another?" I said, "You are telling these drunkards, liars and idiots that they are real bhaktas. They will just go home and carry on their old behaviors." Maharaji said, "Some of them will remember what I said of them, and it will make them want to develop this quality in themselves. If 10 out of 100 are inspired in this way, it is a very good thing." A devotee once said to Maharaji, "Maharaji, why do you tell people to do something and then blame them for it? If I tell them to jump off a height, should they do it? I just tell them what is going on in their minds." All of this seemed to be a process whereby Maharaji was using devotees in the service of the awakening of one another. When the Indians were feeling resentful of the Westerners, Maharaji would say, "They are very sincere and very pure, and that's why I love them. The Westerners all test me. You Indians all have blind faith." Maharaji once said of the Westerners, "For Westerners, just being in India is a form of renunciation. They have given up so much to be here. Once they believe fully with their whole hearts and souls like children." Not only did his response differ from person to person, but it varied over time for each individual as well. It was as if each time you came before Maharaji were the first time, and if the same conversation happened again and again, which was often the case, it was because the devotee remained caught in the same place, visit after visit. But each time the devotee would let go of the aspect of his thinking and behavior in which he or she was stuck. Then he or she would find a whole new Maharaji. One of Maharaji's favorite style of dealing with devotees, especially the Indian, was abuse, and he was a master of it. Most of the Westerners did not understand Hindi well enough to appreciate the papery language Maharaji used, and most of the translators took it upon themselves to clean up his language from him. The Indians had become accustomed to his way of talking and actually interpreted it as a form of endearment. Maharaji always hit the people he liked. If he called you names, like saying you were wicked or depraved, you knew he liked you. He would abuse people, calling them troublemaker, telling them they danced naked, drank too much, were rowdies or sharabis. A relative used to give me trouble all the time, but I would say nothing. Troubled, I went to Maharaji, and he knew right away, saying that this man was bothering me. He said, "It is good if somebody abuses you, good in a spiritual way also. A person progresses if someone abuses him. Don't be worried. A day will come when this man will come and bow his head before you." One day it happened. He came to me saying, "I made all these mistakes. I gave you unnecessary troubles. Beside the abuse, there was a great deal of teasing and chiding. Dada has his God today, tea and cigarettes," said Maharaji to Dada, who only laughed. Dada used the corner of his own dhoti to wipe Maharaji's mouth. Someone criticized Dada and said he should not do this. Then a woman brought milk, and there were a few drops around Maharaji's mouth after he drank. Maharaji turned to Dada and asked, "Why are you leaving this?" and grabbed Dada's dhotis himself to wipe his mouth in front of everyone. One woman laughingly remembered the intimate friendship he had with Maharaji. She told how he loved to tease and put people's legs. She described how he would play in this way with the Westerners. Before a large group of Indians, he would ask them some questions, and they would give some reply. Then Maharaji would turn to the woman and wink, saying in this way, "See how native these people are. They don't know everything. They don't know anything." And the Westerners would be talking everything he said as deep, mysterious truth, while he laughed at their simple innocence. A family came for the darshan of Maharaji. They had bought a box of sweets for him in Nainital, and during the drive in Kanchi, they began saying to each other how much they would like to sample a sweet or two. Finally, they did so, and then rearranged what was left so it would not appear that one was missing before the box was presented to Maharaji. Immediately Maharaji recoiled and refused even to touch the box. Take it away, it is contaminated, throw it out, let the dog eat it." "No, the dogs wouldn't even touch, this is polluted, throw it out." There was a sweet maker who used to come to Maharaji full of devotion and bring many sweets for all whenever he visited. Maharaji praised him and rewarded him. After some time, he began to become inflated with pride and self-importance. One day in particular, after an absence of some time, he brought a prasad, a small box of sweet, half the size of what people usually bring, and this was a sweet maker. Maharaji looked at him askance, emptied out the sweets and gave the small box to a devotee nearby and said, "Don't give him a big box of puris. Here, put some puris in this instead." "Would you like to drink this water?" Maharaji asked me. It was unclean and from a Muslim source. He knew I was a Brahmin and would not drink it, and he never forced me against my nature. Often he would say to people, "Offer that to us," knowing I would not take it. Then Maharaji would say, "No, don't give it to him. He won't take it." I had been in Bombay on a religious pilgrimage where I stayed with the family in their home. The head of the family had to take a drink of alcohol every evening for his heart condition. He offered me some, and I ended up getting quite drunk on scotch. Later, when I returned to Maharaji, he was talking to me about a sadhu who had gone to America. Maharaji asked, "What do they feed him in America?" "I don't know, Maharaji, but I am sure it's very pure food." "They feed him milk," said Maharaji. "That's good. Do you know what they put in the milk?" He leaned forward and said to me in mock conspirational voice, "Liquor?" "No." "Yes." "Oh no," I exclaimed, as though he had just described the most horrendous breach of behavior, to which Maharaji replied, "Oh yes," and looked at me significantly. I broke up. He had just nailed me to the wall. One of the beauties of the relationship between the abusing, chiding Maharaji and the devotees was that many of them weren't afraid to fight back, and he seemed especially to enjoy those who stood up to him. I was able to speak in this brutal way because, knowing him since I was 6, I never reflected about the respectable way to talk with him. There was no feeling of bigness or elderness between us. Once, for example, he was just pulling on my nose, and I said to him, "Don't do that. If you can make it longer, then you can do it. Otherwise, don't touch my nose." Maharaji said, "Okay, I won't touch it, but I can bless you on the top of your head." I said to him that whatever he did with me, he must do in the right way. So he patted me on the head. This was the way I could talk to him. This is what I am missing these days, since he left his body. The last time I saw Maharaji was in Vrindavan. We had travelled since early morning to get there and arrived shortly before noon. But he didn't come out of his room until after 3 p.m. When he emerged, he immediately began yelling at me, telling me to go away, saying that he didn't want to see my face. "Jao, go!" I yelled right back at him, asking what had I done to him. I had travelled all morning and waited all day to see him, and this was his greetings. "No," I said, "I won't go." He kept on yelling and finally called the chowkidar to throw me out. The chowkidar came, hands folded, speaking politely but persistently. I yelled at Maharaji, "Just let me see how this man will touch me, how he will throw me out. I won't go." "You know," finally Maharaji called me to him. He patted me on the head and said a few mantras, just as he had done the first time I saw him. Now he was smiling so beautifully. He told me that his Shakti, spiritual energy, would always be with me, and that now I should go. By then I was filled by him, and I said that he didn't have to tell me to go. I was living on my own now, because I had received his darshan. My mother is a great devotee of Maharaji, and she even rebuked Maharaji when she thought it proper. Maharaji said of her, "See, she can do this. Only people with a pure heart can do such things." Then again sometimes Maharaji rebuked her for coming. "Oh, why have you come? You should go home. You have come without the permission of your cow. I never knew who Maharaji was. Was when I wouldn't leave, Maharaji said, "You have eaten my brain. Please go from here." Maharaji would insult me. "Go away, I won't talk to you." I would reply, "I won't go until my work is done." I didn't want to go to Madras with Maharaji. He asked me to go, but I had no clothing. Maharaji said he was going, and I said I would only go to the station and say goodbye. So I went inside his railroad coach because I wanted to pranam. But he just wouldn't talk to me. He turned away and wouldn't even look at me. I wouldn't get off, and after the train started, Maharaji began laughing. Then I had to go with him. In those days, Maharaji never stayed too long in one place, seldom more than 2 or 3 days, so I wasn't able to get his darshan more than a few times. Then I left Kanpur for Calcutta for 20 years, where I was very busy and had no connection with Maharaji. When I returned to Kanpur, I remembered Maharaji wondering where he was and growing annoyed at myself for not seeking him. I left my meals for 2 months. My wife asked me why I was angry, why I wouldn't eat grains, but I never told her the reason. I was deeply annoyed with myself. Once in Allahabad, a man asked that I have the darshan of a very good saint. Without knowing the saint's name, I was taken to Dada's house. Maharaji saw me and said, "Why have you not eaten your meals for 2 months?" I replied, "Why have you not given me darshan? I may be mad, but you are a saint. You shouldn't be mad." Like a child, I spoke very rudely to him. Someone asked me, "Are you going to have a fight with Maharaji?" I said, "Yes, of course. Why shouldn't I fight? He is like my father and I his son. Why shouldn't we fight? Don't interfere." Maharaji said, "Please don't interfere. He is my very old devotee." The people went away and Maharaji turned to me and said, "Now go home. I will come to your house tomorrow morning and I'll take my meal there." I said, "All right. When you take your meal at my place, only then will I start taking grains. If you don't come, I will not." Maharaji said, "Come tomorrow." I said, "No, Maharaji, I have no reliance on your words. You tell me to come for you tomorrow, but you may not be here then. Then what will my position be? I won't go. I'll sleep tonight here on the veranda or on the grass." Maharaji said, "No, there's no place for you to sleep here." I said, "It doesn't matter, Maharaji. I'll sleep outside the gate on the public road with 1 or 2 bricks for a pillow. Then in the morning I'll catch hold of you." Maharaji said, "Oh no, you must rely on me. I will definitely go with you. You go." Maharaji insisted, giving me his firm word. He then sent someone after me to drive me home. This man asked me to wait for half an hour. I sat down. Several people who had overheard my discussion with Maharaji told me that Maharaji often gives a blank check that is never cashed. He may or may not come. I told them that I would come the following morning, and if Maharaji didn't come with me, I would take the oath that I would not even drink water until he came. As I was saying that, this Maharaji immediately came from inside. Wait, I'll go with you just now." We climbed into 2 cars and drove to my house. Arriving at about 11 at night, no fresh food was available, but Maharaji ate off the leftovers from dinner. Taking a little of whatever was offered, he said, "I have taken, now you eat. Start eating grains and don't fast." Then he left. This is the story of Maharaji's blessing upon me. By and by it increased. Often this quality of the play between Maharajis and devotees was truly childlike. Maharaji would plead with me like a spoiled child. "Oh Ma, please sing bhajan, devotional song." He would quote the song: "A well without water, a cow without milk, a temple without a lamp, so is a man without bhajan." It was the day of Raksha Bandhan, the day of tying protection ribbons on the wrist of your brothers. Earlier I had bought ribbons for my brothers and for Maharaji as well. I left ribbons for my brothers at home but had Maharaji in my purse. I'd never spent this day with Maharaji and I very much wanted to tie the ribbon around his wrist, but I felt shy doing it in front of so many people. When we were alone for a moment, he let me tie it on his wrist. Just then someone came into the room and Maharaji said to him very shyly, "Mother is tying the Raksha Bandhan." Maharaji had been in his room all morning, giving darshan to many people. After many hours, Dada whispered to Maharaji as a father to a child, "Come Maharaji, you have been in here all morning and have never once gone to urinate." Maharaji put the blame squarely on Dada's shoulder. "It's all your fault. You didn't remind me." Maharaji once seemed to make a great effort to pick up a dead fly on a piece of paper. Finally, he held it out for Dada to take. As Dada reached for it, the fly flew away and Maharaji said angrily, "I went to all that trouble and you let it go." "Baba," said Dada, "it was in your hand, not mine." Maharaji just laughed. In 1968, at Kanchi, Maharaji would spend most of the day sitting on Dada's bed. He would say, "Dada keeps awake, so I must stay up too." At 3 a.m., he came to Dada's room knocking, "You wake me, so today I wake you."